Fleet Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. His ship, the Crusher of Worlds, was the pride of the Caltharian Empire. Around him, 11 other warships moved in perfect formation through the dark space of the Helix sector. For 300 years, the Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy. Their ships were the strongest, their weapons the most powerful, and their army the largest. No other species had ever been able to challenge them. Today was supposed to be just another patrol, making sure that no one dared to enter Imperial space without permission. Vextar's forearms moved smoothly as he checked the reports from his bridge crew. His green skin gleamed under the bright lights, and his large black eyes scanned the data screens. Everything was normal. Everything was quiet. Then Communications Officer Zephlys called out from her station, "Admiral, we have something on the sensors." Vextar turned his massive head toward her. "What kind of something?" "A ship, sir. Unknown. Design. It's moving toward our position from the outer system." The Admiral walked over to her station, his heavy boots making loud sounds on the metal floor. "Show me." The main screen lit up with an image that made Vextar laugh. The ship was small, maybe 1/10 the size of their smallest escort vessel. It looked like someone had built it from scrap metal and spare parts. Its hull was dark and rough, with strange angles that made no sense. There were no smooth curves, like Imperial ships had, no beautiful lines or shining armor. "That's it?" Vextar asked. "That pile of junk?" "Yes, sir. It's not in our database. We have no record of this design or the species that built it." Navigation Officer Keltmos looked up from his station. "Sir, the ship is heading straight for us. It's not trying to hide or run away." Vextar found this even more amusing. In his long career, he had seen many species try to challenge the Empire. They always started brave, but they always ended up begging for mercy. This would be no different. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Let's see what these aliens have to say for themselves." Zephlys worked at her controls for a moment. "Channel open, sir." Vextar's voice boomed across space, translated into 17 different languages by the ship's computer. "Unknown vessel. You have entered Imperial space without permission. This is Fleet Admiral Vextar of the Caltharian Empire. You will stop your ship immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with destruction." They waited. The alien ship kept coming closer. Then a voice came back over the radio. It was speaking in a language the computer could not translate, but somehow the tone was clear. The speaker sounded calm, maybe even bored. "This is Captain Deho of the UES Indomitable. You are interfering with our salvage operation. Stand down, immediately." The bridge went completely silent. Even the quiet humming of the ship's system seemed to stop. Vextar stared at the communication station as if it had just started speaking nonsense. "Did that alien just order us to stand down?" he asked slowly. Zephlys checked her equipment twice before answering. "Yes, sir, that's what it said." Tactical Officer Brentok looked up from his weapons console. "Sir, should I power up the main guns?" Vexitar's mandibles clicked together in what humans might call a smile. This was going to be entertaining. "Not yet. Let's try to educate these creatures about Imperial power. Fire a warning shot across their bow. Use the plasma cannon." "Yes, sir." The Crusher of Worlds turned slightly, bringing its massive weapons to bear on the small alien ship. The plasma cannon charged with a sound like thunder, and a bright blue bolt of energy shot across space. It was designed to disable the alien ship's engines without destroying it completely. The Empire preferred to capture new species alive when possible. The energy bolt struck the alien ship dead center, and nothing happened. Brentok stared at his instruments. "Sir, the shot made contact, but there's no damage. The energy just disappeared." Disappeared? The alien ship absorbed it somehow. Our energy readings show that their power levels actually increased after we hit them. Vexitar felt the first small touch of worry in his stomach. In 3 centuries of Imperial expansion, their weapons had never failed to work before. Every species they had encountered used similar technology: metal hulls, energy shields, plasma weapons. The rules of space combat were well known and simple. But This alien ship seemed to be playing by different rules. The voice came over the radio again. This time the translator had figured out the language, the words were clear, and the tone had changed. Captain Deho sounded less patient now. That was a mistake. Vextar straightened up to his full height. He was not going to be intimidated by a single small ship, no matter what strange technology it might have. All ships, attack formation. Target the alien vessel, full power. Around them, the other 11 Imperial warships moved into position, their weapons powered up, creating a light show of charging energy that could be seen for millions of kilometers. The combined firepower of 12 Imperial ships was enough to destroy a small moon. "Sir," Sensor Officer Lithara called out, "I'm reading something strange from the alien ship." "What now?" "Its hull is changing. The metal is moving, flowing like liquid, and there are small thrusters firing all around it." On the main screen, they could see the alien ship transforming. What had looked like a simple, ugly design was now shifting and changing. Sections of the hull moved to new positions. Small engines that had been hidden were now visible, adjusting the ship's position with tiny, precise movements. "What are they doing?" Bexitar demanded. "I think," Lithara said slowly, "they're getting ready for our attack." The Admiral felt anger building in his chest. No alien species had ever prepared to fight the Imperial Navy. They usually surrendered or ran away. The few that tried to fight were destroyed quickly and completely. "Fire!" he shouted. "All ships, fire everything." The space around the alien ship exploded with light and energy. 12 Imperial warships poured their full firepower into the small area where the human vessel was flying. Plasma bolts, particle beams, and missile warheads filled the void with destruction. When the light faded, the alien ship was still there. Not only was it still there, but it hadn't been hit at all. Every shot had missed, even though the target area had been completely covered with weapons fire. It was impossible. "How?" Brentok whispered. On the screen, they could see the alien ship moving between their shots like it was dancing. It twisted and turned with movements that should have been impossible for something that size. Small adjustments from its thrusters kept it just out of the path of every energy bolt. "It's like they knew where we were going to shoot before we did," Lithara said. Vextar realized that his mandibles were trembling. For the first time in his life, he was seeing something that the Empire could not easily destroy. But he was still an Imperial Admiral, and he would not be defeated by a single alien ship. "All ships ramming speed," he ordered. "If we can't shoot it, we'll crush it." The Crusher of Worlds and its escort ships turned toward the alien vessel and accelerated to maximum speed. Each Imperial ship was many times larger than the human vessel. Simple physics said that mass and momentum would win this fight. The alien ship just floated there, waiting for them. Then Captain Deho's voice came over the radio one more time. He sounded tired now, like someone who had hoped to avoid this, but knew it was necessary. "Minho," he said, apparently talking to someone on his own ship. "One shot. Make it count." A small port opened on the side of the alien ship. Something shot out. Not energy, but a solid object moving incredibly fast. It was just a piece of metal, but it was moving at a speed that made Imperial sensors struggle to track it. The metal rod hit the Crusher of Worlds in the center of its hull and passed completely through the ship as if the armor wasn't there. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Imperial flagship began to come apart. The single shot had somehow destroyed the ship's structural integrity. Hull plates fell away into space. Internal explosions lit up the darkness as systems failed throughout the massive vessel. In less than 30 seconds, the pride of the Imperial Navy had been reduced to floating debris. Vexitar's last thought, as the bridge section broke away from the rest of the ship, was that the aliens had made it look easy. They hadn't used massive weapons or overwhelming force. They had simply done exactly what was needed to win, nothing more and nothing less. The other 11 Imperial ships found themselves facing the small alien vessel alone. In the space of 4 minutes, the human ship systematically destroyed them, all using the same simple, efficient method each time. When it was over, the alien ship returned to its salvage operation as if nothing had happened. In the wreckage of the Imperial fleet, A single emergency beacon continued to broadcast. Its message would eventually reach Imperial High Command, carrying news that would shake the Empire to its core. For the first time in 300 years, Imperial ships had been completely destroyed by an unknown enemy, and the enemy had used just one ship to do it. Captain Deho sat in his command chair aboard the UES Indomitable, watching his crew work at their stations. The bridge was quiet and efficient, nothing like the grand, impressive bridges of the alien ships they had just destroyed. Everything here was built for function, not beauty. "Tactical report," he said calmly. Tactical Officer Hyunwoo looked up from his console. "All hostile contacts eliminated, Captain. No survivors detected. Our hull integrity is at 100%. No damage to any systems." "Good. So-young, what did you learn about their technology?" Dr. So-young, the ship's science officer, was still studying the data from their brief fight. She was a small woman with quick hands and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Their weapons are energy-based, probably plasma. Their shields use basic electromagnetic fields. Hull composition is a metal alloy that would have been advanced on Earth maybe 50 years ago." She paused, looking at more data. "Captain, these aliens were using very old technology. Nothing we saw would have been a threat to even our oldest ships." Deho nodded. It was what he had expected. The Indomitable was not even a military ship. It was an exploration vessel, built for long-range travel and scientific research. Its weapons were basic defensive systems designed to clear debris or discourage pirates. The fact that it had easily destroyed 12 alien warships said more about the aliens than about human technology. "What about their numbers?" he asked. "Navigation," Officer Tae-young answered from his station. "Long-range sensors show this was just a patrol group. Based on their formation and the way they moved, I estimate they have much larger fleets somewhere else." "How much larger?" "Could be hundreds of ships, sir, maybe thousands." The bridge was quiet for a moment. Everyone understood what that meant. The Indomitable was alone out here, millions of light years from the nearest human settlement. If these aliens decided to send their entire fleet after them, even human technology might not be enough. But Deho had been a ship captain for 20 years. He had fought in the solar wars, survived the destruction of Earth, and led refugee fleets across empty space for 7 years. He knew that the size of an enemy's army mattered less than how they used it. "Their tactics on he asked Hyunwoo. "Basic formation attack, sir. They moved in straight lines, fired all weapons at once, then tried ramming when that failed. No creativity, no adaptation. They fought like they expected us to just sit there and take it." "That's because that's what always happens to them," So-young said. "I analyzed their communication signals while they were talking to us. They have records of contact with at least 30 other species. Every single contact ended the same way. The other species either surrendered immediately or was destroyed." Deho stood up and walked to the main viewing screen. Outside, the wreckage of the alien ships drifted slowly through space. Some pieces were still glowing from internal fires. It looked like the aftermath of a disaster, not a battle. "They've never had to really fight before," he said quietly. "They just use overwhelming force and expect that to be enough." "Sir," Communications Officer Min Kyung called from her station. "I'm picking up more signals. Long-range communications, heavily encrypted. I think word of what happened here is spreading." "Can you break the encryption?" "Working on it, sir. The patterns are complex but not impossible. Give me an hour." Deho walked back to his chair. An hour was plenty of time to think about their situation. The Indomitable had been peacefully salvaging wrecked ships from an ancient battlefield when the alien fleet had arrived. The salvage was important. They needed raw materials to keep their ship running and their small population alive. Like all human ships since the evacuation, the Indomitable was home to about 800 people. They had families, children, elderly citizens, and workers from dozens of different professions. The ship was not just a vessel. It was a small piece of human civilization trying to survive in a hostile galaxy. "Status report on the salvage operation," Deho ordered. Engineering Officer Kiwon looked up from his console. "We've recovered about 60% of the useful materials, sir. Another 4 hours should complete the operation." Any problems with the salvage equipment? No, sir. The magnetic grapples are working perfectly. We've found some interesting technology in the wrecks too. Whoever built these ships was very advanced. Daeho made a mental note to have So Young examine the recovered technology later. Human ships had been designed to incorporate new discoveries kyckly. It was one of the advantages of being refugees. They couldn't afford to ignore anything that might help them survive. Captain, Min Kyung called out, I've broken their encryption. You're going to want to hear this. Put it on speakers. The bridge filled with alien voices speaking in the language their computer was now translating. The conversations were coming from multiple sources across several star systems. Patrol Fleet 7 is not responding to communication attempts. Last transmission mentioned contact with unknown species. Request immediate reinforcement. For Helix Sector, Grand Admiral Thakmar wants full details on the situation. Daeho listened carefully to the panic in the alien voices. These creatures had built an empire based on superior firepower and intimidation. Now that superiority had been challenged, and they didn't know how to respond. So Young, he said, analysis of their language patterns? They're afraid, Captain. The stress indicators in their voices are very high. They're using formal military protocols, but there's underlying panic. I don't think they've ever dealt with a situation like this before. What about their technology level? Based on their communications equipment, I'd say they're about equivalent to Earth's technology from the early 21st century. Very advanced by galactic standards, but not particularly creative. They seem to prefer larger, more powerful versions of basic designs rather than developing new approaches. Weapons Officer Minho spoke up from his station. Captain, do you want me to prepare for more attacks? Daeho considered the question. The Indomitable carried enough ammunition for its kinetic weapons to destroy perhaps 50 more ships the size of the ones they had just fought. But ammunition was precious, and they were a long way from any place where they could get more. Prepare defensive systems only, he decided. If they come back, we want to be ready. But I don't want to start a war we don't need to fight. Understood, sir. The hours passed quietly as the salvage operation continued. The alien communications gradually became more organized as their commanders took control of the situation. From what the humans could understand, a much larger fleet was being assembled to investigate what had happened to Patrol Fleet 7. Captain, Tae-young called out. Long-range sensors are picking up new contacts, multiple ships approaching from 3 different directions. Numbers? At least 40 ships, sir, possibly more. They're moving in a coordinated pattern, much more carefully than the first group. Daeho felt the familiar calm that came before a difficult decision. The smart thing to do would be to leave immediately. The Indomitable was fast enough to outrun most pursuit, and they had enough salvage materials to last for several months. But running would only delay the problem. These aliens clearly controlled a large area of space, and human ships needed resources that could only be found in inhabited systems. Sooner or later, they would have to deal with this empire. So Young, do we have enough data to estimate their full military strength? Based on their communication patterns and the way they're organizing this response, I estimate the total fleet strength at somewhere between 500 and 2,000 ships. All similar to the ones we just destroyed? Probably, sir. Their technology seems very standardized. That's efficient for maintenance and training, but it means they probably don't have much variety in their capabilities. Daeho made his decision. Continue salvage operations. When the new fleet arrives, we follow the same protocol. Try communication first. Defend ourselves if necessary. Sir, Hyunwoo said quietly, there are going to be a lot more of them this time. Yes, there are. But they're going to make the same mistakes the first group made. They'll assume that numbers are enough to win. And if we're wrong? Daeho looked around at his crew. These people had followed him across half the galaxy, trusting his judgment to keep them alive. They had left behind everything they had ever known when Earth was destroyed, and they had built new lives aboard this ship. If we're wrong, he said, then we'll adapt. That's what humans do. The alien fleet continued to approach, moving slowly and carefully. Their communications showed that they were taking the threat seriously now. They had learned enough from the first encounter to know that they were dealing with something dangerous. But they still didn't understand what they were really facing. The humans weren't just another species with better weapons. They were survivors of a civilization that had been forced to leave everything behind and learn to live in the darkness between stars. They had already lost everything once. They were not going to lose what little they had left without a fight. When the alien fleet finally arrived, Captain Deho was ready for them. Grand Admiral Thokmar stood in the War Council chamber, staring at the holographic display that showed the complete destruction of Patrol Fleet 7. Around the circular table, the Empire's highest-ranking officers watched the same recording. For the third time, their faces showing the same disbelief they had felt when first seeing it. The recording was short and brutal. 12 Imperial warships, representing 3 centuries of military tradition and technological advancement, had been eliminated by a single alien vessel in less than 4 minutes. The enemy had made it look effortless. Intelligence Director Baktha, Thokmar said without taking his eyes off the display. Report. Baktha, a thin creature with pale green skin and nervous movements, activated his personal data pad. Sir, we have searched every database in the Imperial archives. There is no record of this species. No previous contact, no intelligence reports, no diplomatic files. They appear to have come from nowhere. Species don't come from nowhere. War Minister Kefal growled from across the table. Where are their home systems? Where are their colonies? Where is their fleet? Unknown, sir. The alien ship that destroyed our patrol was alone. We have no indication of how many more ships they might have or where they come from. Fleet Admiral Zarthok leaned forward in his chair. What about their technology? What did our sensors tell us before they were destroyed? Baktha scrolled through his data. Their ship appears to be constructed from basic materials, iron, carbon, ceramic composites. Nothing exotic or particularly advanced. The design is functional but crude by Imperial standards. Then how did they defeat our ships? That's the disturbing part, sir. They didn't use superior weapons or overwhelming force. They used precision. Every shot they fired was exactly what was needed to destroy our ships. No wasted energy, no excess firepower, just efficient destruction. War Minister Kefal slammed his heavy hand on the table. Efficiency doesn't matter if you're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Where is Reinforcement Fleet 3? They should have reached the contact zone by now. Communications Officer Lithrin checked her console. Sir, Fleet 3 arrived at the Helix. Sector 6 hours ago, they found the wreckage of our patrol, but the alien ship was gone. Gone where? Unknown, sir. They left no trail, no energy signature. It's like they simply vanished. Thokmar finally turned away from the holographic display. In his 70 years of service, he had overseen the conquest of 16 star systems and the subjugation of 23 different species. He had never encountered an enemy that could simply disappear. Science Director Veltra, he said, what is your analysis of their combat capabilities? Dr. Veltra was the Empire's leading expert on alien technology. She had studied every species the Empire had encountered, learning their strengths and weaknesses. But she looked uncertain as she accessed her data. Sir, the aliens appear to use kinetic weapons, solid projectiles accelerated to extreme velocities. This is actually primitive technology, but they've refined it to a degree we've never seen before. How primitive? Most species abandon kinetic weapons once they develop energy-based systems. Plasma and particle beams are more versatile and require less ammunition. But these aliens have somehow made kinetic weapons more effective than our most advanced energy cannons. How is that possible? Precision. Targeting, sir. Their weapons hit exactly where they need to hit to cause maximum structural damage. It's like they understand the engineering of our ships better than we do. Intelligence Director Baktha spoke up again. Sir, there's something else. We've been monitoring communication signals across the outer rim. We're detecting similar signals from at least 12 other star systems. The War Council fell silent. Thokmar felt something cold settle in his stomach. 12 systems? Yes, sir. The signals are using the same communication protocols as the ship that destroyed our patrol. It appears these aliens have established a presence across a much wider area than we initially thought. How wide an area? Approximately 40,000 cubic light-years, sir. That's nearly a quarter of the outer rim. Fleet Admiral Zarthok stood up abruptly. Impossible. We would have detected large-scale colonization efforts. We monitor all movement in Imperial space. That's the problem, sir, Boktha said quietly. These systems aren't in Imperial space. They're in regions we had marked for future expansion, but hadn't claimed yet. Technically, they're not violating our territory. They're still a threat to Imperial security, War Minister Kepal declared. We should mobilize the entire fleet and eliminate them before they become a larger problem. With what? Dr. Veltra asked. Sir, if they have ships similar to the one that destroyed our patrol, and they're spread across 40,000 cubic light-years, we might be looking at hundreds or thousands of enemy vessels. Then we build more ships. We increase production. Minister, Thokmar interrupted. How long would it take to build enough ships to outnumber an enemy fleet of unknown size? War Minister Kefal calculated quickly. If we mobilize every shipyard in the Empire, 5 years minimum, possibly 10. And in those 5 to 10 years, what prevents this enemy from continuing to expand? The question hung in the air without an answer. For the first time in Imperial history, they were facing an enemy they couldn't simply overwhelm with superior numbers and firepower. Communications Officer Lithran looked up from her console again. Sir, I'm receiving a priority transmission from Deep Space Monitor Station 12. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was tight with barely controlled panic. High Command, this is Monitor 12. We have contacts throughout the Vega sector. Multiple alien ships, same design as the one that attacked our patrol. They're just sitting there. Sitting there doing what? Thokmar demanded. Nothing, sir. They're not attacking, not advancing, not communicating. They're just present. Watching us watch them. How many ships? 17, sir. All surrounding previously unclaimed systems. They appear to be establishing some kind of perimeter. Thokmar exchanged glances with the other council members. This was not the behavior of a conquering army. Conquerors attacked, seized territory, demanded surrender. These aliens were doing something different. Any attempts at communication? He asked. Yes, sir. They respond to hails, but only to inform us that we are approaching their territorial boundaries. When we ask about their intentions, they simply state that they are defending their new homes. New homes? Yes, sir. They're not claiming conquest rights or demanding tribute. They're treating these systems like they belong there. Science Director Veltra leaned forward. Sir, this suggests a completely different motivation than we've encountered before. They're not trying to build an empire. They're trying to build settlements. Settlements for what purpose? Unknown, sir. But the pattern suggests they're refugees, not conquerors. Refugees from what? No one had an answer for that question either. The idea of a species powerful enough to destroy Imperial fleets being refugees from something else was too disturbing to consider fully. Intelligence Director Boktha spoke again. Sir, there's one more thing. We've detected energy signatures, consistent with large-scale construction projects in several of the systems they've occupied. What kind of construction? Habitation structures, sir. Orbital stations, surface installations, agricultural facilities. They're building permanent settlements. On our future territory, War Minister Kefal added angrily. Territory we never claimed, Dr. Veltra pointed out. Territory we hadn't even explored yet. That's not the point. The point is that they're expanding without Imperial permission. Grand Admiral Thokmar raised his hand for silence. The argument was pointless. Whether the aliens had the right to settle in unclaimed space was irrelevant. What mattered was that they had the power to defend themselves, and the Empire currently had no way to remove them. Recommendations? He asked. The War Council was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Science Director Veltra spoke. Sir, I recommend we attempt peaceful contact. Send a diplomatic mission with a small escort. Try to understand what these aliens want and whether their goals conflict with Imperial interests. And if they refuse to negotiate, then we learn more about their capabilities while keeping our losses minimal. War Minister Kefal snorted. Negotiate? We're the Kaltharian Empire. We don't negotiate with aliens who destroy our ships. Minister, Thokmar said quietly, we've never encountered aliens who could destroy our ships before. Perhaps it's time to consider new approaches. He stood up, signaling the end of the council session. Draft orders for a diplomatic mission. Small escort only. No more than 3 ships. I want to know what these creatures want and where they came from. And if the diplomatic mission is destroyed like our patrol, Kefal asked, then we'll know we're at war with an enemy we don't understand. And we'll have to decide whether the Empire is prepared for that kind of fight. As the council members filed out of the chamber, Thokmar remained behind, staring at the holographic display that still showed the wreckage of Patrol Fleet 7. For 3 centuries, the Empire had been the strongest force in this part of the galaxy. Now, for the first time, they had encountered something that might be stronger. The question was, what were they prepared to do about it? Captain Wu Jin stood on the observation deck of the UES Last Stand, watching the massive space station slowly rotate against the star field. Kepler Station had been abandoned for over 200 years, but its basic structure was still solid. With some modifications, it could become a vital resource for the human settlement, taking shape in this system. Engineering report, he called to his comm unit. Engineer Kite's voice came back from somewhere deep in the station's machinery. Captain, the main reactor core is in better shape than we expected. With the parts we salvaged from the Helix sector, we can have it running at 60% capacity within a week. What about life support? That's going to take longer, sir. The atmospheric recycling systems need complete replacement, but the structural foundation is excellent. This station was built to last. Wu Jin nodded, though Kaite couldn't see him. The human settlements scattered across this region of space all faced the same challenge. They needed infrastructure, and they needed it quickly. Every station, every asteroid mining facility, every orbital platform they could salvage and repair meant their people could live more safely. Sir, Navigation Officer Ye Jin called from the bridge. Long-range sensors are picking up contacts. Multiple ships approaching from the direction of Imperial space. Wu Jin made his way quickly back to the bridge. The Last Stand was not a military vessel, though like all human ships it carried defensive weapons. Its primary mission was engineering and construction, turning abandoned structures into livable spaces for refugees. Numbers and classification? 43 ships, sir. Similar design to the ones we encountered at Helix, but they're moving much more carefully this time. Formation suggests they're expecting trouble. Distance? 6 hours at their current speed, sir. They're not approaching directly. They're taking a roundabout route, probably trying to observe us before making contact. Wu Jin considered his options. The Last Stand carried a crew of 400, including families and children. Unlike the exploration vessel Indomitable, this ship was designed for construction work, not combat. But it had advantages the aliens probably didn't expect. Kai-Tai, he called on the comm. How quickly can you get the station's defensive systems? Online? Defensive systems, sir. Use your imagination. This station has massive structural components, industrial equipment, and orbital maneuvering thrusters. What can we do with that? There was a pause as the engineer thought. Captain, are you asking me to turn the entire station into a weapon? I'm asking you to give us options. In that case, give me 3 hours, sir. The next few hours passed quickly. While Kaite and his team worked inside the station, the crew of the Last Stand monitored the approaching Imperial fleet. The aliens were being much more cautious this time, clearly having learned from their previous encounter with human ships. Sir, Communications Officer Mine reported, the Imperial fleet has stopped just outside weapons range. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. What are they saying? Standard Imperial demands, sir. They want us to surrender for questioning. They claim we're trespassing in territory marked for Imperial expansion. Response? Standard human response, sir. This system was unclaimed when we arrived and we're engaged in legitimate salvage operations. Wu Jin smiled. It was becoming a familiar pattern. The Empire claimed territory they had never actually settled, then demanded that anyone else leave immediately. But humans had been forced to become experts at living in the spaces between established powers. Any change in their formation? No, sir. They're maintaining distance and continuing to observe. I think they're waiting for reinforcements. Or orders from higher command. The bridge crew continued their work while the two fleets watched each other across empty space. It was an odd sort of standoff. Neither side wanted to start a fight, but neither side was willing to back down. Then Kaitei's voice came over the comm, sounding pleased with himself. Captain, I've got your options ready. Show me. The main screen switched to an external view of Kepler Station. At first glance, it looked unchanged. The same massive wheel-shaped structure it had always been. But as Wu Jin looked more carefully, he could see subtle differences. New equipment had been attached to the station's outer hull, and several of the docking bays had been modified. What am I looking at? A kinetic bombardment system, sir. The station's original design included cargo catapults for launching supply containers to other facilities. I've modified them to launch chunks of station debris at high velocity. Effective range? With the station's orbital position and rotation, we can hit targets anywhere in a 60-degree arc around us. The projectiles will be traveling at approximately 12 kilometers per second when they reach the target area. And the Imperial fleet is currently positioned right in the middle of that arc, sir. Wu Jin felt a familiar satisfaction. This was what humans did best. Take whatever they had available and find a way to make it work. The aliens had larger ships and more advanced weapons, but humans had creativity and experience. Sir, Ye Jin called out. The Imperial fleet is moving. They're advancing to attack position. Time to contact? 20 minutes at their current speed. Kitei, how long do you need to prepare the bombardment system? It's ready now, sir. Just waiting for your order. Minei, open a channel to the Imperial fleet. Channel open, sir. Wu Jin kept his voice calm and professional. Imperial vessels, this is Captain Wu Jin of the UES Last Stand. You are approaching a human construction site without permission. Please alter course to avoid interference with our operations. The response came back quickly, translated by their computer from the alien language. Human vessel, you will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your destruction. I see. In that case, let me show you something. He nodded to Kitei, who activated the bombardment system. The Imperial fleet was still 15 minutes away when the first projectiles reached them. To their sensors, the attack must have appeared to come from nowhere. Chunks of metal and debris traveling at incredible speeds, launched from a space station that had appeared completely inactive. The aliens had no time to react. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not solid objects moving at 12 kilometers per second. The projectiles punched through their defenses like they weren't there. 7 Imperial ships were destroyed in the first salvo. The rest tried to scatter, but the station's rotation meant that new projectiles were being launched continuously. By the time the Imperial fleet realized what was happening, half their ships were gone. Cease fire, Wu Jin ordered. The bombardment stopped, leaving the surviving Imperial ships floating in space, afraid to advance and unsure how to retreat safely. Minei, open the channel again. Channel open, sir. Imperial fleet, this concludes our demonstration. As you can see, we take the security of our construction sites seriously. You are welcome to remain at your current position and observe our operations, but any attempt to approach closer will be met with additional defensive measures. The response took several minutes to come back. When it did, the voice sounded much less confident than before. Human vessel, what do you want? It was a simple question, but Wu Jin could hear the confusion behind it. The Empire was used to dealing with species that wanted to conquer territory, demand tribute, or negotiate trade agreements. They didn't understand humans who just wanted to build homes. We want to be left alone to complete our work, he replied. We have no interest in Imperial territory, and we pose no threat to Imperial operations. We simply wish to establish peaceful settlements in unclaimed space. You destroyed our ships. You attacked our construction site, we defended it. The choice of whether to continue fighting or withdraw is yours. The Imperial fleet remained at their current position for another 6 hours, apparently waiting for new orders. Finally, they began to withdraw, moving slowly and carefully to avoid triggering another bombardment. As they left, one final message came over the radio. "This is not over, humans." Wu Jin smiled. "Min-A, respond with standard diplomatic protocol." "Yes, sir." "What should I tell them?" "Tell them we look forward to future peaceful interactions." After the Imperial ships disappeared from sensors, Kitei's voice came over the comm again. "Captain, should I dismantle the bombardment system?" "No," Wu Jin said. "I think we're going to need it again." He was right. Over the next few weeks, similar encounters occurred throughout human-settled space. Each time, the pattern was the same. Imperial forces would approach expecting easy victories, and human ships would demonstrate that the situation was more complicated than it appeared. But the humans were learning something important from these encounters. The Empire was not used to fighting an enemy that adapted quickly to new situations. Every time the aliens tried a new approach, the humans found a way to counter it. More importantly, the humans were discovering that they weren't as outnumbered as they had feared. The Empire was large and powerful, but it was also slow and inflexible. Against an enemy that could think quickly and use unconventional tactics, size was not always an advantage, would be expensive in ships and lives. For a species that had already lost everything once, the cost of defending what they had rebuilt was irrelevant. Ambassador Jin-A stepped off the shuttle onto the neutral station's docking platform. Her simple gray uniform a sharp contrast to the elaborate ceremonial armor worn by the Imperial delegation waiting to greet her. The station had been hastily constructed for these negotiations, positioned exactly halfway between human and Imperial space. She was a small woman with calm eyes and steady hands, chosen not for her diplomatic experience but for her ability to remain patient under pressure. Behind her walked Admiral Sung-ho, representing human military interests, and Dr. Mi Young, their chief scientist and cultural analyst. The Imperial delegation was led by Grand Admiral Thokmar himself, flanked by War Minister Kefal and several other high-ranking officials. Their massive forms towered over the humans, but Jin-A had learned not to be intimidated by size. In space, size often meant simply being a bigger target. "Ambassador," Thokmar said in heavily accented but understandable human language, "welcome to what I hope will be a productive discussion." "Thank you, Grand Admiral. I share your hope for a peaceful resolution to our current situation." The conference room was deliberately neutral, with seating arrangements that put neither species at a disadvantage. As they took their places around the circular table, Jin-A noticed that the Imperial delegation seemed nervous. They kept glancing at Admiral Sung-ho as if expecting him to suddenly attack. "Before we begin," Thokmar said, "I must ask about your intentions. The Empire has never encountered a species that simply appears in unclaimed space and begins building settlements without seeking permission or establishing diplomatic contact." Jin-A had expected this question. "Grand Admiral, our people are refugees. We had no choice but to find new homes quickly. We settled in unclaimed space specifically to avoid territorial conflicts." "Refugees from what?" The human delegation exchanged glances. This was the difficult part. "Our home system was destroyed 7 years ago. We prefer not to discuss the details, but the result was that millions of humans were forced to evacuate in whatever ships we could find. We've been searching for suitable places to rebuild ever since." War Minister Kefal leaned forward aggressively. "That doesn't explain why you destroyed our ships. Refugees don't usually possess such advanced military technology." Admiral Sung-ho spoke for the first time. "Minister, our technology is not advanced. It's practical. When your entire civilization has been forced to live on ships for 7 years, you learn to make every system as efficient as possible. Efficient enough to annihilate Imperial battle groups? Efficient enough to defend our families," Sung-ho replied calmly. "Your ships attacked our people. We responded appropriately." Dr. Mi Young activated a small holographic projector showing star charts of the region. "If I may, I'd like to address the fundamental misunderstanding here. The Empire seems to believe we're trying to build a competing power structure. That's not our goal." She highlighted the systems where humans had established settlements. "We've chosen locations based on resource availability and defensive positions. We're not interested in conquest or expansion for its own sake. We just need places where our people can live safely. Science Director Veltra, who had been studying the display, spoke up. Your settlement pattern is interesting. You've avoided the most valuable systems and instead chosen locations that offer strategic advantages. Dr. Veltra is correct, Mi Young said. We've learned that the most valuable resources are often the most contested. We prefer locations that others might overlook, but that meet our basic needs. Grand Admiral Thokmar studied the star chart carefully. The human settlements formed a rough arc across the outer edge of the region, positioned to control key hyperspace routes without directly threatening Imperial territory. This appears to be a defensive perimeter, he observed. It is, Admiral Sung Ho confirmed. We've established positions that allow us to monitor threats and protect our civilian populations. We have no intention of using these positions for offensive operations. What about expansion? Surely your population will grow and require additional territory. Jinne had been hoping to avoid this topic, but it was inevitable. Grand Admiral, our current population is approximately 2 million people spread across 17 ships and 6 stations. Even with normal population growth, we won't need additional territory for decades. And when we do expand, we'll follow the same principle: settle unclaimed space without threatening established powers. War Minister Kefal snorted. Convenient. You establish military positions throughout our region of interest, claim they're purely defensive, and promise not to expand. How do we know you won't change your minds once you're stronger? Because, Admiral Sung Ho said quietly, we've already been stronger. Our original civilization controlled dozens of star systems. We had thousands of ships and billions of people. None of that saved us when something larger and more dangerous decided we were a threat. The room fell silent. The Imperial delegation had clearly not expected this revelation. You're saying your species once controlled a much larger territory? Dr. Veltra asked. Yes, Jinne confirmed. What you see now is what's left. We learned that size and strength can make you a target. We prefer to remain small, mobile, and focused on survival rather than expansion. What destroyed your original civilization? Thokmar asked. The human delegation was quiet for a moment. Finally, Admiral Sung Ho answered. We don't know. Something came from outside our region of space, something we had never encountered before. Our fleets couldn't stop it, our weapons couldn't hurt it, and our defenses meant nothing. We managed to evacuate a small fraction of our population before the rest was lost. Are you saying this threat might still exist? We have no way of knowing. That's one reason we're building these settlements, to create multiple secure locations in case we need to evacuate again. Dr. Mi Young leaned forward. Grand Admiral, I understand the Empire's concern about our presence. But consider this. We've demonstrated that we can defend ourselves effectively. Wouldn't it be better to have us as neutral neighbors rather than enemies, or worse, to fight a war that leaves both our civilizations weakened against external threats? The negotiations continued for hours, with both sides gradually working toward a framework for coexistence. The Empire would formally recognize human settlements in unclaimed space, while humans would agree not to interfere with Imperial operations in established territory. One final question, Thokmar said as the session neared its end. You claim your technology is not advanced, merely practical. Yet you've defeated Imperial forces with apparent ease. How do we know you won't use this advantage to threaten Imperial interests in the future? Jinne smiled for the first time during the negotiations. Grand Admiral, let me share something about human nature. We've spent 7 years learning to survive with limited resources, uncertain futures, and constant threats. We've become very good at solving problems with whatever tools we have available. She gestured to the star chart still displayed in the center of the table. Every settlement you see represents hundreds of hours of careful planning, resource management, and engineering innovation. We've learned to make every decision count because we can't afford to waste anything. That doesn't answer my question. It does, actually. The same mindset that makes us effective in combat also makes us prefer peaceful solutions. War is expensive, unpredictable, and wasteful. We'd rather spend our energy building homes than fighting battles. Admiral Sung Ho added, besides, you've seen what happens when you attack our people. We defend ourselves effectively. But you've also seen that we don't pursue enemies who withdraw. We're not interested in conquest. We're interested in security. 3 days later, the Treaty of Neutral Station was signed by both delegations. It established formal boundaries between Imperial and human space, created protocols for peaceful contact between their species, and included provisions for scientific and cultural exchange. As the Imperial delegation prepared to leave, Grand Admiral Thokmar approached Jin'e privately. "Ambassador, I must admit that your people have surprised us. In 3 centuries of expansion, we've never encountered a species like yours." "How so?" "You fight like warriors when attacked, but negotiate like civilized beings when offered the chance. You're powerful enough to threaten us, but seem genuinely uninterested in doing so. It's unusual." Jin'e nodded. "Grand Admiral, when you've lost everything once, you learn to value what you have left. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want a small part of it where we can live in peace. And if that peace is threatened again, then you'll discover that refugees who have learned to survive can be very difficult to destroy." 6 months after the treaty was signed, Captain Deho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, now serving as flagship of the human Outer Rim Defense Fleet. The ship was conducting joint patrols with Imperial vessels along their mutual border, a sight that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. "Captain," Communications Officer Min Kyung reported, "we're receiving a priority message from Imperial Command. They're requesting assistance with an unidentified contact in the Vega sector." Deho smiled. The universe was full of surprises, and the Empire was discovering that having experienced neighbors could be useful when facing the unknown.